Welcome back, Kwik Brains. Here's your question of the day. How do you enhance your situational awareness? And we're going to define what that is to you. And I'm really excited because we have back on our show personal protection advocate and expert, Tim Larkin.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great because now if you haven't listened to our previous episode of us talking together, it's a must listen to. It is a must listen to because we talked about how to learn anything faster by going slower. But that wasn't just it. We talked about breaking things down and always having a beginner's mind. And we talked about giving yourself permission to be able to make mistakes. And we talked about a little bit about fear and violence. And the reason why we're having these difficult conversations is just because people want to ignore it doesn't mean it goes away. And when it comes to your brain and that amygdala, fight or flight or freeze, and we're talking about fear, personal safety, and being proactive. When I've gone through your trainings for my own personal safety, it was because of something that someone very close to me went through. It was a violent act. And it really sensitizes you that this could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of demographics. Maybe you could give maybe 30, 60 seconds on how you made this your mission. And then I want to go into situational awareness.
We were talking about how the people that really love what they do love the foundational aspects, the basics on it. And I got into it because I had a long history of learning martial arts. My grandfather was very influential in getting me to learn how to protect myself, and that was great. And then I went through the military, and then it was after 9/11. It was actually, I had a course 2 days before 9/11 here, and it was right down by the financial district, and the place where we'd been training on the 11th was destroyed. It was there. 3 of my guys were in the building. They got out, but it was a seminal event for me. And that's when I realized that it is fantastic training military law enforcement, and I love to hear that these guys, do well, but I expect them to do well. That's their job. That's where they volunteered. What's hard is when, you have people who are living great lives, they're great people, and then violence comes into their life. And I realized a lot of it was because they just weren't looking at things correctly. They weren't taught, they didn't have any skill sets for this. And we had these great skill sets, but we were keeping them in this very specialized world. And once I started sharing that and seeing the behavioral changes you get from learning like situational awareness, it makes a huge difference in people's lives.
I know a big focus for what you do is similar to what I do, not only teaching methodology to accelerate learning, so I appreciate that as a peer, is also the result is behavioral modification.
Yes.
Is to get people to take it from information and inspiration to implementation and also integration. So
Right.
it's who they are, and you train that. Now, when we're talking about situational awareness, is that something that could be trained, and why is it even important for people who are listening and watching?
Situational awareness it's just an essential skill set that in the society we live in right now, it's not as necessary as it used to be until you need it. And when you need it, it's absolutely necessary. So it's learning skill sets that, especially the challenge, that we have these days with our smartphones,
My goodness.
they're taking all of our senses. We're willingly giving up our senses.
You see people walking
like
around like this
Yeah.
on the streets of Manhattan,
Oh yeah.
crossing traffic like this.
Oh yeah. And I have this amazing tape. When I talked at Google, I opened up with this tape. It shows a bus robbery in Seattle. And this guy is literally walking down the middle of the bus, calmly robbing people left and right. They're all on their phones.
Oh my goodness.
The one guy gets a gun put right in him. He looks up, he redirects the gun, which you think, oh good, he did a good thing, and he charges towards the guy, has his phone in his other hand, and I'm thinking, oh good, he's gonna hit the guy with the phone. No, he's slipping the phone into his pocket of his overcoat. He was more concerned about cracking his screen than saving his life.
Wow.
That's because these things have taken away. Now that's not going to change. We just need that awareness that, are you going to willingly give up your senses? I mean, here in New York, when I'm walking around, I'm shocked at the numbers of people walking down the streets where they're giving up, their ears and their vision, to these very addictive platforms.
And people predators, it's not a comfortable conversation, but they hope you do that, right?
Absolutely.
You're setting your
They don't want a challenge.
right.
And so if you ask yourself what's the number one benefit of situational awareness, it is the fact that you are less likely to be targeted by a predator because you're aware. It's not about. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a former SEAL, and he lives here, and he talks about getting on the subway. He goes, it's amazing how many people don't notice the predators. He said, what's interesting is when I get on and I just do my scan, once the predator sees that I am aware of them,
Right.
I'm no longer somebody they look at. And he's a very well-trained person, but physically he doesn't look like,
Right.
anything. He blends in very well. So the way people can do this, a really easy way, what I try to do with people is I try to gamify it for people. I try to make it fun. And if you make something fun and aware, it's much easier to be that way. So when you're out on the street, like a really easy thing for people to go back to their childhood and remember what it felt like to do hide and seek, to play hide and seek.
Right.
And I always ask people, hey, how did it feel like when you were looking for somebody? How did that feel? Oh, it feels great. It was so much fun. You're eagerly looking. Where could they be? I said, how did it feel like when you were hiding? Well, I was just hoping they're not going to find me. I'm trying to get smaller, and I'm trying just to make sure that I'm not seen, and it's a defensive feeling. Reactive. And so what I want people to do when they're living in the real world, I want you to be that seeker. I want you to be that person who's having a great time, just really aware. I go, hey, look where I'm at. Oh, look. And then you start thinking, like I have people play the game of thinking like a bad guy. Well, hey, if I was going to pop out on somebody here, where would I do it? Oh, I might go over here. So now your brain's actively looking for areas of, where a predator might be, but not in a fearful way, in more of a fun way that you learn. And the byproduct of playing that game is you start getting really good situational awareness.
Right.
I have people, I have a lot of people that travel around the world, and oftentimes little things, disaster preparedness stuff we don't like to think about. But as I was telling you, you get on a plane, you sit in your seat. First thing you should do is just look around. Where are the exits? And people go, well, yeah, I know that, Tim. No, there's a little more to it. I know the exit's right up there, and now I count my seats. I sit there and say, okay, there's 7 seats to get to the exit. And now I physically know, okay, all I have to do is I have to touch 7 seats. And I know, why am I talking about touching? Because I'm assuming if there's going to be a problem, it might be smoky. There might be vision, clarity. I don't want to rely just on that sensory system. I know if I just touch 7 seats, I can get to my exit. And it's amazing when you talk to people that have survived anything, any disasters or anything, there's some base form of situational awareness. And these aren't highly trained operators. These are just people that are aware. And attention is probably our most valuable commodity. And we should give ourselves the gift of giving ourselves attention and to our own, awareness and our own protection.
In time and space. In the byproduct of this, I could tell you from the work that we do, the cognitive training that we do, these thought experiments are also great exercises in being mindful. Mindfulness.
Yes.
People are always talking about mindfulness training, but this is one of the exercises and practices people could employ to be more present. Because most people are everywhere else. And also a great exercise in focus and concentration.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The criminals and the predators are extremely adept at this. Why? Because this is how they choose to have, make their living.
Right.
And they look for the easy marks on that. And merely having your own awareness about and walking around as an aware person. And what do I mean by that? Just that you're not completely immersed, that you don't have that victim profile where you're just kind of hunched over and just giving up parts of your sensory system to these predators, basically. It changes your whole mindset. Coming to a new city I've been coming here for a long time, but I love every time I come to New York. Why? It's sensory overload. It is situational awareness. Just it's like the Super Bowl of situational awareness.
Very much.
It's just fun, And I learned so much more about the city also when I walk around. I remember I was in Toronto and I was walking around, and just because I was playing that game, I learned more about parts of the city and saw things that I never would have seen.
And that's the reason why a lot of people yeah, they complain about their memory, but it's not their retention, it's just their attention.
And the problem is with situational awareness, even saying situational awareness, people get on edge. They're
Right.
like, oh, something's going to, you immediately think, oh, people that haven't trained their minds correctly, when you think situational awareness, you think, oh, something's going to happen to me
Right.
and I need to be aware so it doesn't happen to me. Rather than saying, I'm going to embrace the world, I'm going to see what's out there, I'm going to be proactive in this world. And it's amazing. It's just a much more positive way to go through the day. You end up learning a lot more about not only your environment, but you can pick up cues. Even if it's not a predator, you can kind of see, hey, there's something sketchy going on over here. This individual is acting kind of strange. Somebody you probably wouldn't have thought of before, but because you're paying attention to your environments, you can see things long before it gets bad
Yeah.
and just get yourself out of there.
A couple months ago, we had a big blackout in the city here, and people didn't know what to do because they didn't have, just like when you're talking about on the airplane, there's
Right.
smoke, and people aren't prepared, even doing those thought experiments of what they're going to do in certain situations. What people don't realize is our brain primarily is a deletion device. At any given time, it's trying to keep a lot of information out unless you take control of your mind, because there's a billion stimulus we could be paying attention to. So what determines what our reticular activating system is going to focus on and let in? And when you're more open to it and you're asking proactive questions about your environment, you're going to see and be aware of a lot more. So that's really exciting. Do you prepare, even when you're talking about self-protection, your home, in case, at any given time if somebody came in, like, do you have like mental rehearsals for you? And
It's a great place to start. I was going to suggest but a lot of times people say, oh, how do I get started? Well, start at your home.
yeah.
Really the idea, I was telling you, my wife and I, we went through a whole scenario with it. We have three small children. And when we got to our house, or later, the new house that we have, the first thing we did was we just said, okay, if, if something's to happen, what's the procedure? And we had a procedure where she goes off with the children to a certain part of the house. I know she's there. And then I know I can go through the house and I know that I'm able to take action knowing exactly where my family's at. And we've just done this, and she knows that her thing. She has her cell phone by her. She has we have weapons that protect ourselves with the kids. She knows who she's going to call while I'm going through seeing where the things are, and it just gives you that. The brain is good if you give it information ahead of time. If you take it somewhere, and we'll talk more about that on the fear side of things, but don't make it hard on yourself. And the problem is, in my industry, when people talk about situational awareness training, they make it extremely fearful. They make it very scary, where it should be the exact opposite. It should be fun. It should be proactive. You should eagerly want to see, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, look at this part of my house I didn't
You
realize.
turn it into a game.
Yeah, and you gamify it, and it really is, because we learn better that way. And that's where I'd start. I'd start right in your home first, and then take it out in the world. When you go there.
And then pay attention to when you're walking around in environments. I know one of the presence exercises we do, just to focus people's attention on the now, as opposed to people's minds always in the past, or they're always in the future, is just looking around and just pointing out three things that you didn't see before, or three smells, or three your senses, like get in touch. A lot of people, they're very desensitized.
Yeah.
They're so cut off from their senses. So if you were to point out three things you could hear right now, I could hear the siren outside, I could hear the blow of the air conditioning, I guess he's hear somebody walking around downstairs, but it brings you in the present. And because if you're not there, you're not anywhere, really.
Yeah, it's funny. People have kids. I have a friend, Rebecca, and she was telling me when she went through training years ago, she came up to me and she said, you made me feel a lot better, because what she would do with her small kids, it was when they got in the car, she'd play a game with them. She goes, hey, I see three cars. What are the colors? And they'd look around, so the kids would start playing the game. And she got there. She goes, they had no idea that I was training them in situational awareness. She said, but I just realized I'm going to be focused on driving. I need my kids to be aware and help me with things, not from a paranoid standpoint, but just she recognized if there was going to be a problem, she needed to know ahead of time, because she's a single mom with kids and was going to have to take action, and so she said, how can I get my kids to start the awareness process? And it was really, it was kind of like a game of almost like I Spy, but she
Right.
took it to a next level with it. And
That's like Jason Bourne, kind of like,
yeah,
you know.
it's and people sit there and they'll say, "Oh my God, that's paranoid," or "I'm living a life." No,
Right.
actually, you're living a full life. You're actually, you know what's in your environment. You know what's going around because the one thing I tell people all the time is you don't want a predator to surprise you. You
Right.
know, that's the one thing. And if you can do that through situational awareness and just take that out of the mix,
Yeah.
then that's a huge step up to living a much more peaceful life.
And one with more personal power.
Absolutely.
And then in the next episode, I want to talk about that we publish with you is talk about, when you get cues and how it makes you feel, whether it's fear or something else, to be able to trust that, because fear could really be a gift.
Absolutely.
Amazing, Tim. How do people? I know people are going to want to go deeper with you.
Right.
Where do you recommend that they go?
Easy way. I know a lot of people like Instagram. I'm on Instagram, and Instagram has all my websites and everything. For people that are watching this or listening to this, if you want some information on basic self protection, really good information that I put out for free, surviveviolence.com.
Surviveviolence.com.
Yeah.
We'll put a link at our show notes at jimkwik.com/notes, as well to all of Tim's websites. He's done multiple books also as well, and also social media. And speaking of taking action, I challenge everybody to take a screenshot of this episode, like we do at the end of most episodes. Tag Tim, tag myself, and share your big aha. Just one thing that you took away from this. What's one thing you're going to do moving forward? Because the ultimate goal of both our works is behavioral modification. We want you to not just learn something for knowledge's sake. We want you to be able to act, because knowledge times action gives you real power. And as always, I'll repost some of my favorite. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks so much.